There comes a time in every series where we must say goodbye. Either the series comes to its natural conclusion, or it continues on, and we must say goodbye to a character from time to time. Unless you're Vin Diesel in Fast and Furious, in which case neither seems to be dying anytime soon. But for most other characters, death or some other kind of end is inevitable, despite how much we want to hold on to them. Without exaggeration, Wanda Maximoff is one of the single most held onto characters from the MCU that I can think of. The moment this scene happened, fans were theorizing about when we'd see her again. No death in the MCU so far has been more doubted, and with upcoming movies on the horizon, I thought it would be important to clear up what I think of the current situation is with one Wanda Maximoff. This video will be in 3 parts. First, we'll start in the real world and see what Elizabeth Olsen has to say about her character returning. Next, we'll look at the in-universe reasons that point to her being dead. And finally, we'll wrap up by looking at what bringing the Scarlet Witch back would mean from a narrative perspective. All right, let's get into it. As boring as it is sometimes, our theories on movies and TV can be influenced and even decided by decisions made by actors in the real world. At the end of the day, unless a radical recast took place, if Olsen doesn't want to come back, then we won't see the Scarlet Witch again. So even if it isn't my favorite thing to research, I did a deep dive on as many interviews as I could with Elizabeth Olsen, particularly after she wrapped up Multiverse of Madness in 2022. We're going to go back in time and go year by year to see what I found, which was interesting, to say the least. It was obvious that after Multiverse of Madness, Olsen was interested in stepping away from Marvel. What had been a heck of a run in terms of garnering fans and contracts had come at the cost of turning down roles that she would have enjoyed more. An article from May 2022 mentioned this quote that said, "It took me away from the physical ability to do certain jobs that I thought were more aligned with things that I enjoyed as an audience member. I started to feel frustrated. I had this job security, but I was losing these pieces that I felt were more part of my being. And the further I got away from it, the less I became considered for it." But it wasn't just that there were other projects that were more interesting to her. From some of her interviews, it sounded like Olsen had grown more cynical of Marvel Studios. If asked when she would come back, Olsen said, "I think I would, but really it needs to be a good story. I think these films are best when it's not about creating content, but about having a very strong point of view, not because you need to have a 3-picture plan." About a month later, she repeated similar sentiments in an interview with Rotten Tomatoes. My whole thing with having like these big picture deals or whatever, go 9 times or whatever it is that as long as, and this is what happened with WandaVision, as long as there's a good story to tell, I'll be there. But I don't think it's fun for the fans for us to just show up and not have anything interesting to share. And so for me, it's always about the story. If there's a good idea, I'm happy to play her. I mean, that's a good point. Why would you want to just show up? That may seem obvious, but remember, this is when Marvel first went into full-on content mode with both Disney Plus and tons of feature movies. And the way she says it here sounds less like she's describing some future hypothetical and more like she's describing something that has already happened and may be already happening right now. Fast forward to spring 2023, nearly a year after Multiverse of Madness, and an interview she did while promoting her HBO series Love and Death, she explained that she had nothing she was currently doing with Marvel, even going so far as to say, "I don't miss it." Later that year, in a Variety interview, she elaborated on these statements, but still doubled down after being asked if she missed playing Wanda, saying, "No, I don't. I think it's been almost 10 years of playing her, and I've loved it. I think the reason why I'm not calling Kevin Feige every day with the ideas is because I'm really proud of what we were able to do. I think WandaVision was a really surprising opportunity. If someone were to tell me that I'm fired from Marvel movies, I will feel proud of what we made." Proud of what we were able to do with WandaVision. Interesting choice of words. Hold on to that one. Let's jump forward a year. In September 2024, Olsen was asked about potentially reprising the role in the MCU and responded with the following. Quote, "It's a character I love going back to, and there was a way to use her well. And I think I've been lucky. When I started, I was used well. And they kind of didn't know what to do with me for a second there. If there's a good way to use her, I'm always happy to come back." Ouch. I know that's just a joke, but honestly, it's not the kind of comments you hear from actors who are completely at peace with their legacy as a main character. And she's not wrong either. Okay, so then October 2024 comes around. Agatha All Along does fairly well, and Kevin Feige makes these comments last November, where he says, quote, "We are excited to find out when and how Scarlet Witch can return." Okay, obviously that doesn't mean Olsen is interested. It just means that Kevin Feige is. One more fast forward to the near present in March of 2025. The Hollywood Reporter quoted Olsen saying, "As for the future of her fan favorite Marvel character, Olsen confirms she's not going to be part of the Russo brothers' 2 upcoming Avengers movies, Doomsday and Secret Wars. The back-to-back productions are gearing up to shoot in London soon, and Olsen was just returning to the US after wrapping Sam Esmail's Panic carefully in London. Quote, I'm moving on to filming a pilot for FX called Seven Sisters. But now that time has passed, there's kind of this feeling with Olsen that this is what I wanted to do. I did it, I am doing it, and I don't feel a need to do anything differently. The final interview I'll mention is actually in LA Comic-Con in September 2025. She revealed quite a bit at this panel. One of the most important pieces being about Marvel Zombies. Now, most people probably know this by now, but at least a handful of folks commented on my previous videos that having Olsen cast as the Scarlet Witch or the Queen of the Dead in Marvel Zombies was a clear sign that she was back with Marvel Studios, and we'd see her again soon in live action. It wasn't a terrible argument, but it got completely debunked by comments she made during the Q&A at LA Comic-Con. Essentially, she was saying that she actually recorded the parts for that show many years ago, back closer to like 2020, maybe even 2021, and she had no real idea of what the show was about. So no, this wasn't a new project. It was some time ago, probably before Multiverse of Madness even came out by the sound of it. It doesn't help the case that she's returning. In fact, if we're being honest, she didn't really sound that interested in that project at all. Maybe it's because it was animated and streaming only, but I don't know. If I had voiced a main villain in a limited series on Disney Plus and it was doing fairly well, I think I would have put a little time into learning about how it all came out. It doesn't sound like she even watched it yet. Which again is fine. That's not necessarily a judgment on anyone. It's simply an analysis. But now that we've recapped the last 3.5 years via interviews, let's address the elephant in the room. WandaVision was masterful. It was one of the first Disney Plus originals. It was the first Marvel limited series. And it came at a time where we were glued to our screens. And for Olsen, this was also the first Marvel project to focus just on her. She played important parts in Civil War and Age of Ultron, but kind of got lost in the mix for Infinity War and Endgame. Now the spotlight was hers, and the results were undeniable. The show received an exhausting list of awards, became an instant classic for the fandom, and Olsen received her first ever Emmy and Golden Globe nominations. This was the peak. You finally get the spotlight from the big studio you've been working with for 7 years, and you finally get recognition from a character that has demanded much of your attention. And then the following year, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness releases in theaters. I'll start by saying that when I went to see the movie in theaters, I was a bit surprised. I knew the trailers had hinted at Wanda having a dark side, but I assumed that was exaggerated to throw us off from the real surprise villain, or she was going to play both sides or something like that. I was not prepared to see the person we'd explored in many different and emotional ways in WandaVision take the big screen as the main villain of this movie. No, she was just evil, dark, and gruesomely violent, willing to murder countless heroes to get what she wanted. Of course, she was meant to be corrupted by the Darkhold at this point, but even with that, it felt like a completely different person than who we got to know in WandaVision. And that's because it kind of was a different person. Well, in filmmaking terms, at least. As it would turn out, I wasn't the only person caught off guard by how the filmmakers decided to portray Wanda in this movie. In the same LA Comic-Con panel, Olsen elaborates on what has been public knowledge for a couple years now, in that she didn't know she was going to be the villain in this movie until right before filming. Quote, I thought that I was in an ensemble cast, and I thought I was going to be one of the good guys. And then 3 weeks before I was sent to London, they said, you're our lead villain. And I had no clue. I had finished filming WandaVision. I was like, it would have been helpful to know that, just so I could have pulled the thread through a bit. And then back in 2022, she added this detail. We'd literally finished WandaVision on a Wednesday, and I flew to England on a Friday to make the film. I had just experienced a lot of WandaVision, but no one else in Doctor Strange had. It was trying to continue what we had done and what we had learned into this film as much as possible. Now, obviously, the two filmmakers weren't completely inept. They tried to bridge the gap between these two projects. To keep things consistent, Olsen says there was constant conversation between Doctor Strange writer Mark Waldron and Jack Schaefer, writer and creator of WandaVision, so that there was understanding and overlap. Quote, we didn't have edits to share with anyone because we had just finished filming days before. They didn't have any of the edits. Imagine making a spin-off show without watching the original. Either way, it's kind of insane to me. Obviously, we all know why this had to happen this way. They had to meet deadlines. This was the only way. But maybe that was the problem to begin with. If Marvel had never decided to go into this full pump-out content mode, then there would have been more time between these projects, letting them breathe a little bit and allowing for a better bridge between the two. But unfortunately, Kevin Feige and team would not make that call to slow down until a few years later. So, is there a lot of overlap and influence with WandaVision and Doctor Strange 2? I don't think there is. There was just enough, quote-unquote, overlap to make the story not 100% contradict itself. But that was it. You can take the main plot points of something and line it up with your sequel without capturing the heart and soul of that project, which is what I felt happened in this case. And I don't think this was something easy for Elizabeth Olsen. Like I said, I think Olsen taking some kind of break was inevitable after filming Doctor Strange 2 and WandaVision back-to-back, regardless of how either project turned out. However, I don't think it would have been a crazy thing to guess that how these projects turned out might affect how she'd return, if at all. I mean, here's the way I think about it overall. Elizabeth Olsen wasn't that popular of an actress before she joined Marvel. I personally had not heard of a single movie that she'd been in before Winter Soldier. Then you get to be part of this super successful universe. You get to be a literal superhero. You gain a bunch of fans and recognition. Not to mention some seriously consistent income. As mentioned before, it culminates to the peak of your career. An emotional, explorative role that gets you all the accolades you wanted. And then Marvel goes off and dumbs it down. Practically erases part of your show and then seemingly kills you off as the main villain in a Marvel movie that wasn't even everyone's favorite. So what do you do now? Well, you go and do the one thing you couldn't do while working for Marvel Studios. She turned down roles because of the MCU that more closely aligned with the kind of actress she wanted to be. But now she had the freedom to choose those indie art house projects without worrying about what plot points needed to be kept secret. She starred in Love and Death, a limited series on HBO Max that also got her a Golden Globe nomination. She starred in His Three Daughters, sitting at 97% at Rotten Tomatoes, The Assessment, sitting at 84%, and A2 Form film Eternity, which just came out a few weeks ago, which is already at a critic score of 78% and an audience score of 91%. So now Olsen has what she wanted. Freedom to choose projects truly interesting to her, and honestly, more recognition than ever before. Okay, so where does that leave us? Well, she's still pretty busy. She's working on a pilot for FX and has another indie movie with Julia Roberts coming out next year. That, among other work, seemingly puts her in conflict for appearing in Doomsday or Secret Wars. So down the line then, would she ever come back? At the LA Comic-Con, she did leave us with one quote in that interview. A quote, "I hope we continue to surprise ourselves and the audience. I think that's what keeps people coming back, is to not rely on old tricks. So that's what I hope for." Okay, so long story short, is she coming back or not? I'd say probably not, at least not for some time. It feels like there's no urgency on her part to return. And if she did, it would have to be under the most ideal circumstance. Number one, the story would have to be something original and interesting. Number two, it would have to be worth turning down external acting jobs and producing roles. Number three, it would have to be financially worth it. But that's a given, since I'm sure Marvel would pay her. Number four, it would have to be using her character in a way that actually makes sense to her and aligns with her goals as an actress. And there's just not a clear way for that to happen in the near future. I do believe her when she says she won't be in Doomsday. And assuming that they're filming Secret Wars back-to-back, there's a chance that if she returns at all, it'll be post-2027. And that's if she returns at all. And guys, I want to pause here and say that if she never returns, that's okay. Part of the reason I did this deep dive is I wanted to humanize this celebrity a little bit more. I feel like sometimes we get caught up in all these theories and rumors and forget that these actors are still people. They don't owe us anything, and they have to do what's best for them. Honestly, if stepping away from Marvel was the best thing for Elizabeth Olsen, for her family, and her, wouldn't we all want that? Or is our entertainment more important than a famous person's well-being? I'm not saying that wanting or hoping for her to return is bad. I mean, there's nothing inherently wrong with that. It's just that sometimes we get mad at people for doing the exact same thing we probably would do in their shoes. Just something to think about. As mentioned, that's not to say that Kevin Feige and Marvel Studios aren't trying to get her back, especially after the success of Agatha All Along and Marvel Zombies, which leads me to the next part of my video. Ironically, this video did not start as an attempt to say that we're never seeing Scarlet Witch again. I just wanted to show how I thought Wanda was dead. Think of it this way. If Elizabeth Olsen never comes back, like hypothetically, then I think we can just assume that Wanda died and call it a day. But we just won't know that for several years, unless she mentions it or whatever. Anyway, beyond that, let's talk about some in-universe reasons as to why Wanda Maximoff is dead. Number one, the escape from Westview. So first of all, I want to back up. I did mention in a previous video I hadn't watched Agatha All Along at that time, but enough of y'all recommended it to me, so I gave it a shot. And this is where my first argument comes into play. Would it be possible for Agatha to escape Westview if Wanda wasn't dead? Before Billy breaks her out, she's already really close to putting two and two together that her captor is gone, and therefore her power can't be as strong over her. There's still a curse, but it's breakable now. She's realizing this completely devoid of death and Billy. If Billy hadn't broken her out, it's definitely possible that she would have been able to do it sometime in the near future as well. Plus, Like, are we going to ignore the fact that in the very first episode, Wanda asks Death,
How did she die?
Wrong question. That witch is gone. And all the copies of the Darkhold with her.
I recognize that gone doesn't always mean dead, but when you yourself represent death incarnate, and you have the knowledge that no one else would know about who is currently alive and currently dead, I feel like gone means dead in that context. Plus, how could Agatha know about what happened in Multiverse of Madness? There are a couple of different small details that people have pointed out already that reference the location of Wanda's death on Mount Wundagore in Europe. How would she know that if she was under the spell? Billy never told her. Death never told her. To me, this points to the fact that the spell was weakening and she could sense that Wanda was dead. And this idea of her being able to sense Wanda's death actually creates a double bind for the dialogue that everyone points to as hinting at Wanda's being alive.
Is Wanda Maximoff really dead?
Yes.
No. Maybe.
Did you see a body?
Yes, I did.
Did anybody else?
It's hard to say.
Okay, if we assume I'm wrong about her being able to sense Wanda's death, then this is a really dumb conversation. Billy knows that Agatha has been cursed for like 3 years, and he's literally been by her side ever since she got out. So A, how could she possibly know if Wanda was dead? She's been in Westview the whole time. And B, how could she have seen a body? Not only was she in a cursed state, but Wanda died miles away in Europe at Mount Wundagore, which may not have been common knowledge, but if Billy knew that Wanda had been rumored to have died, then asking if she saw a body would have been pointless. Agatha could not answer those questions, so this dialogue makes no sense. The only way it possibly makes sense is if Agatha could sense that Wanda was dead. That would explain the body at the beginning of the series. But if she could sense that she was dead, then she was dead. And in this scene here, she's just lying to the kid for any number of reasons. Otherwise, she had no way of knowing at all, and therefore her saying she's maybe dead doesn't really have much of an impact. Number 2, in terms of the statue being in Deadpool and Wolverine, everyone talks about this. But if you watch the assembled episode of Deadpool and Wolverine, the set director explains they just got different pieces from different movies as Easter eggs, like Hulk's bed from Thor 3, a table from the Marvels, and then of course the big statue of Wanda. I think it's just an Easter egg, you guys. It looked really cool, so they included it. Plus, let's play this out. You only end up in the void if you're going to or are in the middle of doing something that would affect the timeline, right? So the question is, why would the TVA prune Wanda like seconds before she died? If she was going to wreck the timeline, that was about to be corrected real fast. It makes no sense to prune her away. It was probably just some other Scarlet Witch or something from any number of infinite realities. Plus, and this is a very small detail, but I rewatched the ending of Multiverse of Madness and the statue literally crumbles. So this cannot be the one that we see in Deadpool and Wolverine. Okay, so those are my 3 arguments. But honestly, the more I thought about it, the more I saw hints of a wild theory. And this may be out of left field. But remember how I mentioned that even if Olsen doesn't want to come back, that doesn't mean Marvel and or Kevin Feige are okay with that. Like, it may be in their best interest to keep the character coming back, even if Elizabeth Olsen is not interested. Well, I feel like the statue thing and the weird dialogue in Agatha All Along here are meant to bait us into overhyping it. It could be an intentional decision to do 2 things. 1, test to see if the fan base still cares about Wanda and would be interested in bringing her back. And 2, if they do respond well, you can use that to pitch to Elizabeth Olsen, hey, look, your fans love you, and they're very interested in seeing you return. It's a no-lose situation, because if the fan base did not react and did not care about it, then you don't have to bring her back at all. And if she doesn't want to, anyway, that's fine. But if the fans go wild over these references, then maybe, just maybe, it'll help reel Elizabeth Olsen back in to the delight of her adoring fans. Like, I don't know. These 2 scenes seem like the very most intentional rage bait the more I think about it. They feel more like there are things thrown in from corporate than part of some filmmaker's plan. And I don't want to spend forever here because clever theorists will always find a reason to say she's alive, and that's fine. Like, that just doesn't persuade me. However, there is something we have to consider if Marvel was going to bring her back. And that's, how does she even fit into the narrative overall? Wanda started as a villain. In Age of Ultron, she literally poisons Tony's mind, which directly leads to him creating Ultron, which almost single-handedly destroys the entire Earth's population. She did that. Not only that, but she continues to help Ultron with her brother until it seems like it's just a little too much for her and she finally becomes a good guy. Okay, so now she's a reformed superhero. Kind of like Bucky. Under the wrong influence, but now she's trying to have a better life. Cool. And then her husband gets killed in front of her twice. And then she brings him back to life and he dies again, but not before she creates 2 children out of scratch who also get taken away from her, leading her back to her roots of being a villain. So in short, she went from villain to hero back to villain. Do you realize that not a single other mainstream Avenger character has done that? That's like if Bucky all of a sudden became the main villain for an entire movie by going back to his Winter Soldier roots, and then at the end we get a glimpse of regret and lucidity, and then a building falls on top of him. What? That's insane. And it's insane to think about how, from an arc perspective, Marvel can bring back the Scarlet Witch. Because let's face it, there are only 2 options. Number 1, bring her back as a villain, and number 2, bring her back as a hero. Let's talk about option 1. I think Marvel would really struggle with motivation on this one. Like, let's say she walks out of the building rubble and she's like, I'm not done yet. Okay, what do you want? The Darkhold was destroyed by her. So why exactly is she evil still? Wasn't that the only thing that was corrupting her, and without it, she's not really a villain? That alone should rule this option out. But since rewriting, overwriting lore is also an option, we can just say, oh, she was actually evil the whole time. And that would satisfy a lot of people. But again, talk about ruining emotional beats of a movie. That would mean the climax of Multiverse of Madness was a waster as well, because Wanda, seeing how evil she had become, was supposed to knock her out of it. And making her evil again would ironically be doing to Multiverse of Madness what they did to WandaVision, rolling right over resolution to make the next plot point work. And even for Marvel, I have a hard time seeing that work out. Plus, the very thing she wanted was already present in her world without having to murder anyone. Agatha all along showing that her son's spirit was living in another host makes Multiverse of Madness even worse, because that means she did not have to rampage across the multiverse and execute the Illuminati. He was right there. To me, that's a very depressing thought. Number 2, option 2, bring her back as a hero. There are 2 really difficult reasons to overcome to bring back the Scarlet Witch as a hero. 1, she's done a lot of bad stuff. Like, let's face it, Westview alone should have left her branded as a villain for the rest of her life. Literally torturing people by making them play in your little game is pretty dark. But after everything she did in Multiverse of Madness, can we really just accredit that to the Darkhold? And even if you did, can you really just bring her back into the Avengers? Like, hey guys, whoa, sorry about all that. Might have gotten a little carried away there, but I'm good again. Let's go get Dr. Doom. It doesn't work. She was the main villain and she had a motivation. Again, going back to the Winter Soldier, Bucky never killed anyone intentionally. Not once. He was 100% programmed to kill everyone he did when he was the Winter Soldier. Can we confidently say that about Wanda? I don't know. And if we did, from an audience perspective, from a narrative perspective, from a marketing perspective, can we honestly say that she would work as a hero after everything she's done? I don't think Wanda can come back from that. Okay, second reason bringing her back as a hero won't work. The issue you run into is what I'm starting to call the watch your back problem. I couldn't think of a better name for it. But basically, it's when a character that either is normally evil or has been evil many times before becomes good. But you never quite trust it because you know that specific character's history or their general character's history. Take Norman Osborn in Neighborhood Spider-Man. Or to double down on an example I gave in a previous video, Jean Grey. For my comic purists in the audience, I think this is one you struggle with. Jean Grey is a good character. She's a hero. That's true. But in terms of pop culture, she always ends up involved in something sketchy and or becomes a villain. Every single time. In the 90s, in X-Men the animated series, she becomes the Phoenix and has to live in the heart of a sun to keep everyone from being destroyed. In the 2000s, she died, which resurrects her as an evil alter ego of herself, called the Dark Phoenix. In 2019, she literally had the Dark Phoenix movie essentially speeding up what we had already seen in the X-Men The Last Stand. In 2024, X-Men 97 gave us the Jean Grey clone saga, where the Jean we've known all this time is actually an evil sleeper clone. So basically 4 separate times across about 30 years, we've seen the same character reprise a villain role. Why does this matter? Well, now each time we see her on screen from now on, until who knows when, we will be expecting something crazy from her. We will expect her not just to be a normal hero for long, but for some kind of villain arc to creep up in some way, shape, or form. She's stuck in this seemingly unbreakable narrative. Which, on a side, is why I don't think we'll see her in Doomsday. There's just no time to explore something like that. Scarlet Witch is built from the same cloth. Let's face it, we're so used to seeing her being a villain at this point. We'd never take her being a good character for long. Not only is there the repeated villain arcs I've already mentioned, but she was the main villain in Marvel Zombies too. Not to mention the comics having plenty of arcs where she turns evil. So the point is, we'd just be waiting for the other shoe to drop and let Marvel reveal her as a villain again. Rinse, wash, repeat. And it's going to be pretty hard to convince your required actress about those kinds of plans for the future, when her most recent comments are, "I hope we continue to surprise ourselves and the audience." I think that's what people keep coming back, is not to rely on old tricks. So that's what I hope for. So what are we left with? Elizabeth Olsen is not super interested in returning. In-universe Wanda seems almost for sure dead, and narratively, it seems like a nightmare. So I guess that's that, huh? Bittersweet ending to a beloved character. Case closed. Is what I would have said, if not for one piece of dialogue that changed everything for me.
I have been a voice with no body, a body but not human, and now a memory made real. Who knows what I might be next? We have said goodbye before, so it stands to reason.
We'll say hello again.
That line right there. I'm sorry, that is too beautiful to mean nothing. These lines triggered an amazing idea. An idea that blew me away the more I thought about it. And it has to do with the different kinds of forms that a character can take. Like Vision said, we've seen him as Jarvis, made by Tony, then the Vision in Age of Ultron, and then Vision created from the piece of the Mind Stone that lives in Wanda. And now we'll see him in a new form, White Vision, created by Sword, but now instilled with the memories of the original version. The same character in a different way. But he's not the only one. Now we've seen Billy Maximoff in different forms too, from babies to kids to a completely different body that now holds his memories. And after the events of Agatha All Along, we know that Tommy Maximoff is in a similar situation with a different body, but with the same memories. So what if we saw Wanda again, but she too was in a different form? I mean, take your pick. The multiverse is endless. But what if another Wanda got pushed into the 616 universe, and that became the mainline Wanda after the events of the next two Avengers movies? And the story could be her trying to fit back into this family with White Vision and the two boys. I guess it's a slightly similar arc to that of Gamora in Guardians of the Galaxy 3, but depending on which version of Wanda they bring in, I think this could be really interesting. Speaking of that, who could they bring in? Well, like I said, literally anybody in the multiverse. But some candidates could be either the Wanda from the Illuminati world that we see through Multiverse of Madness, especially since we never saw Vision in that universe. But honestly, I'm not convinced that we'll actually see that world again. One wild idea I had was bringing her in as a character in the Fox universe, essentially as another child of Michael Fassbender's / Ian McKellen's Magneto. I mean, we saw Quicksilver in that universe. Maybe Wanda is out there too, but maybe just not as significant enough to impact that world. Anyway, my overall thoughts are that Marvel doesn't actually have a plan to bring Wanda back. I think they want to, but they don't have anything set in stone. I think Elizabeth Olsen is hesitant to come back, but will if they have a very interesting original story to show. And most importantly, I think the Wanda Maximoff of the 616 universe is dead as a doornail. Anyway, that's the theory. I can't believe how long it's been since I last posted, and I'm super thankful to all of you who stuck around. Honestly, most people take breaks when something bad has happened in their life, but it's been the opposite of that for me. There have been some amazing things in my life right now, keeping me busy, and I feel very blessed to be in the season that I'm in. But I also really love making videos for y'all, so hopefully I can make more in the coming months. Let me know what you want me to cover next in the comments. Alright, that's all I have for you. Until next time, stay theorizing, stay amazing, and thanks for being here.